First, though, is it time to stop naming storms? 0207 862 2222 is the number. Storm Dara was the fourth named storm of the season. The practice of naming storms only began in 2015. The Met Office say it's only done when a storm has the potential to cause disruption or damage. They say giving a storm a name helps effectively communicate the risk to the public. Well, let's have a look. Because back in the day, right, you would basically have thunder and lightning like this. The sky would go dark. Everyone would say, that looks like bad weather. And that's all we needed. And then they'd tell each other. Then we had forecasting, and someone would say, look, this could happen. And you'd have a sense of scale. The names have only just happened. And I went on the old ChatGPT and I said, how are storm names chosen in the UK? And it says, collaboratively. Met Office, the Irish Met Office, and the Dutch come together. They select the names through public suggestions. The criteria are popularity, cultural relevance, and ease of understanding. And by the way, their names are arranged alphabetically. They alternate between male and female. We keep saying, why aren't you choosing Storm Huntley? Right? We've said it to them again and again and again. We get nowhere with this. So, the Met Office put out a film explaining why they started using names.
But first, let's deal with a question that we often get asked about storm names.
Can you please face the right camera?
Why? Why do we bother naming storms? The answer's pretty simple, actually. It's to raise awareness.
OK, here they've got a good point. So the Met Office have put up a load of posts. They go, me going to tell my mum we need to tie down my trampoline. These are posts they get when they put the name out. They say, look, it creates incredible awareness. 5.6 million views of the warning details page on our app. So they've gone digital as well. So all of these storm warnings, this is Storm Malik 3 years ago. This was TikTok. And they're reaching younger people, the Met Office, with TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. And they think this is doing a good job. It's creating greater impact. The thing is, you could scare people. That's one of the worries. The more weather you put out, the more warnings you put out, the more worried people get. Here are the reasons not to name storms. Number one, misleading. Here's an example. We've got two storms, Storm Tyson and Storm Emma, as in Jane Austen. You know what? Tyson turns out to be a bit of a drizzle. Emma's the one that kills 15 people. But because Tyson's a much fiercer name, you think that storm is stronger. So it's misleading. That's the first thing. Secondly, reasons not to name storms. Names don't mean anything. So if you say, here we are, Storm Kevin imminent, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Why don't we just go back to what we used to do in the 1950s? Gale Force 9. Gale Force 8, 10, we can understand a number. We need a number. Third reason not to name storms is that weather forecasters enjoy grandstanding. So they may start grandstanding because they think, oh, let's have another named storm. We can get on TV and talk about it. Okay, that's got to be a worry, Susie.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to veer towards that. I think the naming is a good thing, personally. It's really interesting because I noticed about a month ago this thing about naming storms. Obviously, it's been going on for a long time, but my brain only just clicked. But interestingly, a couple of years ago, there was a storm, can't remember the name of it, but there was a storm, and I just went out with my son, and I was saying to my friend, oh, we're going to go to the park. Turned up at her house, got out the car, and there's like a bin flying through the air, and I'm with my 5-year-old son, and then it clicks. No, it's actually very dangerous.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so I think... Look,
were you helped? Well, do you remember which storm it was? Was it Henry? That sounds like Henry.
I think it was Henry.
Yeah, because Henry there were bins flying.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you would have been safer with them naming it or whether the name is irrelevant.
Look, I think the thing is two people have just died, you know, and I just think, look, if they say that this does help people to take it more seriously, then I think it's worth it. Even if I would rather err on people taking it more seriously than people... And if people feel a bit more alarmed, then let them feel a little bit more alarmed.
Well, you worry about that, Mike, don't you?
Well, I don't think we should be naming storms for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's another Americanism. Now, they name storms in America because, frankly, storms in America wipe out places like New Orleans. New Orleans, I think, was 2005, Hurricane Katrina. And people had to be alerted all the way down the eastern seaboard. The fact they could lose their homes, their lives, their properties, whole communities were demolished. We don't have storms of that severity in this country. So that's one reason, because it means we've turned storms into like a business. you know, which people are sort of becoming more important about. Oh, I can tell you about storm, you know, whatever it's called.
But they are good on their TikTok and everything. That's what the Met Office say.
I don't care. A storm is a weather happening in this country. Now, the other reason, and you're probably going to disagree with me here, Susie, is I think it's politicisation of storms, because I believe that the net zero people, I believe that those who make climate change a major issue in their lives are trying to frighten us all into the fact there are more storms now than ever because we're naming them. That's not true.
It's true. In the 80s...
That is not true.
I thought, when they said they were naming storms, I thought that they would use one name a year.
Yeah.
They're using about 10.
Of course they are.
And I mean, it's, you know, so in the 80s, I can only remember one storm.
Yeah.
You know the one I mean?
1989 one.
The 87, the Great
Michael
Storm.
Fish.
Yeah.
There isn't a storm coming, and all of a sudden half of Surrey's wiped out.
And there wasn't a warning for it.
Yeah, there was no warning. But what I'm saying is now, because it's got a name, what Susie's just said is, oh, I hadn't noticed they named, and then suddenly a light went off in your head, they're naming them. So if you're hearing a different name every week, you're suddenly being brainwashed into thinking, hang on, there's more storms than there ever used to be. No, there's not.
You think it's climate change lot?
No, whether it's climate change or not, the point is, you know, I would rather a mum doesn't go out with her buggy, which again I did once. My buggy was lifting off the ground. People ran and held it down for me.
Yeah.
Again, I just wasn't. I mean, I'm a geographer.
Don't you watch your weather forecast, Susie? Don't you watch your weather forecast? Don't you go out and stick your
Susie
finger in the
needs
air?
a name.
No, I
That's
do.
the thing.
I need a name. Actually,
She needs a name.
that was actually urban climate. You know, when you have those wind tunnel things, it's like a sudden one. So it wasn't so much to do with the forecast. It's actually more to do with that. However, you know, I think sometimes I hear what you're saying around like climate people, etc.
Yeah.
But I think this is important, and I think if young people are engaging with it on social media, there's lots of things they engage with that aren't good. But they're engaging with it and they're learning more about weather, and they're learning actually it can be serious and it can be dangerous. A tree came down on my road about 6 months ago. I've not seen that since
that's
the Great
bad news.
Storm.
You're
That's bad news, but the local economy is being damaged by people saying, ooh, Storm Tom is coming, I'm staying in, and all that kind of stuff.
I don't understand why footballers can't play in the rain. I still don't. I mean, they've got a stadium. It's windproof. Trevor in East Sussex, hi.
Hi, morning, Jeremy and the panel.
Hiya. So do you think they should name storms, or are they just grandstanding?
Well, I think it's a bit of grandstanding, really. I do have a justifiable reason not to name them, and that is quite simply, let's say we've got this storm now, and it's killed 2 people and ruined lots of property. They could say next year the same storm is coming, so people that remember it from this year would be possibly expecting a really violent storm, and if they're paranoid or they've got mental issues, they could be unnecessarily scared.
That's it.
And I think that we should go back to there's a storm coming, gale force, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Met Office can measure the severity of a storm before it hits us.
Wind speed. Yeah.
I totally.
Well, I don't know if a storm is more than wind speed. That's the only issue. It's the volume of water, it's the wind, and it's sort of the torque in the weather spiral.
Yeah,
but I'm not. I should stress, I'm not a meteorologist.
It is, but it's still a storm, and I totally agree with Trevor. I mean, you know, people died in floods in the 1950s. There was very bad weather in the 50s and the 60s. But you know, I do think the climate change people are trying to make out there's more storms now. There were more storms in the 1800s in Florida than there are now. But the Americans had to start naming.
I'm not sure. I don't know. We've probably got more houses now, apart from anything else. Trevor, thank you. Later we'll be asking if inmates should train prison guards, but now your calls on whether it's time to stop naming storms. 020 7862 2222. And let's quickly look at the names for this storm season. So of course, they're so excited by these blooming names. And it's not just British. This is an argument we haven't had, is that if the storm hits Britain, the name should be British. I know that's controversial, but these are also Irish and Dutch names. Ashley, Burt, Connell, Dara, we're on. And then they have to, because some of them are complicated, Iowin, have to give pronunciations. Gerben, Nisha, I mean, to be fair, these Irish names are beautiful. Odjay, Poppy, Rafi, Sayuri, Tilly, Vivian, and Wren. Wren is the last one. Do you think there's a problem, Mike, with these names being not local enough.
Well, yes, I do. I understand the Dutch influence because a lot of storms that hit this country also hit Holland because Holland, of course, is the lowlands and they're very susceptible to flooding and the same wind comes across the North Sea.
You don't mind having Dutch names?
Well, as long as they're recognisable Dutch names, you know, not a Dutch name that I can't pronounce. So it'd have to be a Dutch name I could pronounce.
I don't know.
But I still think you're absolutely right. Look at all the names of the storms in America. They're just normal names. Katrina, you know, or names like
Bill and
that.
Ben.
Sorry?
Bill and Ben.
Well, yeah.
That's what you want. OK, Carol's in Herefordshire.
Exactly.
I gather you got flooded at the weekend, Carol, did you?
I got flooded during Storm Bert, and we must keep the names because if we don't, I wouldn't be, you know, I'd be saying, oh, my kitchen got flooded. Oh, when was that storm? Oh, sometime. I don't know even what year it was in.
I see. Could you not? I hear you because it makes it personal. I do understand that. And so that was actually a couple of months ago, wasn't it, Storm Bert?
Storm Bert was at the end of November.
Could you not just say I got flooded in the big one at the end of November?
No, because it's easier to remember Storm Bert than to try and remember the 24th of November 2024.
Good point, Carol. Thank you. Alan in Oxfordshire. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Jeremy.
Should we stop naming storms?
No, we shouldn't. And it's very similar to Carol's, actually, that it makes them very easy to refer to after the event. And that can be important. For example, if you have a tree falls on your house or a tree falls on your car in a storm, which is actually something that happened to me recently, you can be dealing with that for months later. And when you're dealing with things like insurance companies and other authorities like councils and so on, it makes it so much easier to say, you know, it happened in Storm Elba or whatever, and they know immediately what you're talking about.
Well,
otherwise,
if I may say so,
on the 9th of February at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, it gets much more complicated.
Yeah, listen, that's all very well, Alan, but what happens if your tree's blown over and the storm doesn't have a name? You might struggle to persuade somebody that it happened.
Well, you're not going to be worse off for the fact that some are named, which enables you to refer to them.
I mean, look, Alan, if you get damage to your house, you don't need the name of the storm to remind you when and where it happened, how much you're going to have to claim off your insurance. Your claim is not going to be any more justified by saying, and by the way, this was Storm Patricia, so you know what it's all about. The problem with naming these storms is everyone seems as bad as the last.
Well, that's or the Tyson Emma example is that the name can be confusing. Thanks, Alan. Diana in East Sussex. Hi, Diana.
Hello?
God, it's a long old way to East Sussex. Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Are you there, Diana?
Yes, I'm here.
Well done. Have you had some storm damage to your phone?
No, not yet. I have had in the past, but not this time.
Do you think we should name storms?
Not really, because I lived in Hong Kong and they had a far more informative system, which means that once a typhoon or storm was heading into Hong Kong, you went on a numbering system. Once it reached number 3, you were then told to send the children home for safety. Excellent. 5, you were warned to head home, and once it reached 8 and 10, you were all supposed to be in your home, and only the emergency services went out. I agree that naming maybe people will remember, but it doesn't really say the severity. And did these two people, I haven't read about or how they died, but that is tragic, especially coming into Christmas.
Yeah, it's very sad. OK, all right, Diana, thank you. But quickly to you, Susie, would that not have been better, rather than saying Storm Bert is out because you nearly got hit by a bin, they say 6, it's a 6?
Well, possibly. I mean, look. I like to think that the Met Office are experts, and if this is that they would have hopefully looked at all the options and decided actually this is the one that's going to work best.
All right.
I'm all for the solutions,
OK.
You know, and I think this is hopefully the best solution.
Thanks for your great calls. Later we'll be.